Hey there, welcome along to this week's episode at Life Skills Academy. My name is David Donoghue. I'm joined with Gavin Burke, and we are talking today in part two of the growth versus the fixed mindset model. So, last time we spoke, Gav, we were talking about certain famous books that talked on this topic, and we were talking about how people tend to have a growth mindset in an area of their highest value, and that it's not a fixed mindset is not a personality trait. There's actually more to it.
Yeah, I think that's Dave, that's a lovely one. And if we could really hit that. So a fixed mindset is not a personality trait. A growth mindset is not a personality trait. It's not something that you can instill in somebody, get the fixed mindset out of them. It's there's a much more nuanced um approach to it, or understanding to it. And that is, as we said, we are growth. We have a tendency to have a growth mindset. And what does that mean? Embrace pains and embrace pleasures in the pursuit of something that's highly meaningful. And what we said was something that's highly meaningful, instead of just leaving that out there as a piece of jargon. No, what's highly meaningful is that highest value, and that highest value comes from that highest void, and all are very measurable. You can find them out very quickly. So it's and then when we're engaged in something that's not meaningful, meaning lower priority, and our brain perceives no meaning in it, then we have a fixed mindset, meaning we want to avoid the challenge. We see our brain effectively drops into that systems one avoidance mechanism, when the brain perceives no meaning in that. So that's kind of like what we discussed last time.
Brilliant. Because I think it's important, right, to touch on to that fact that they are not just labels, that they are there's a lot more going on. And looking at it, like, what would be some of the telltale signs that somebody has a growth mindset?
Well, so again, let's just be really specific. They're resilient, they're adaptable. What does that mean? That means that if a quote unquote bad thing happens, they have the ability to, I want to say, for it not to destabilize them, but what's actually happening, they have the ability to not fall into their amygdala, their systems one, because the amygdala will make them want to avoid the scenario. They'll have all the anxieties in their body, combined with they'll want to seek an immediate gratification. Now we're being technical here, Dave, because it's much easier for us to say, oh, they can embrace it and they can move on. But I think it's really important for what we're trying to get across is that parents see that there's an actual neurological thing happening here. So the growth mindset is a consequence of the child or of ourselves not falling into our amygdala, or what we call an amygdala hijack. And it's the ability to stay in the prefrontal layers of the brain. And the brain, you're going to stop me here, I know, any minute here now, but that brain is a meaning seeking organ. When the brain sees meaning in something, meaning high value, it will stay in its prefrontal areas of the brain. And the prefrontal layers of the brain are the objective areas where they can see both sides of the event. And they can see, oh, if something, let's call it quote unquote bad, happened, how did that serve me in getting what I want to get? And that allows us to stay stable, rational, objective, as opposed to irrational, subjective, emotional. And that's effectively what the growth mindset is.
Got it. Okay. And it's with the growth mindset, looking at it, it is so dependent on a person's values. So, where would be an example of somebody having a growth mindset where somebody else may have a fixed mindset?
Say that to me again now, Dave.
So, where would be an area that somebody's values, like, could we find an example, a concrete example of, let's say, a child? I'll name one that would probably come to mind. Could it be said that a child would be labeled with a growth mindset, perhaps in maths, because they love maths for some reason that's connected to their values, right? And the same
Yep.
child switches class, and 30 minutes later, they're now in
Take
English.
P. Take P.
P,
Take P. You
yeah,
see
and
that.
you
Oh,
could
we
label
can
them
see
as
both. you can see both. So P, you see the kid, and look, I know in our last video we spoke about values, and we're not going to speak. We're going to move off values in a second here, but just to finish what and move on to the other aspect of the growth mindset. But to finish what your example there, we see this the whole time. So I had a child the other day in fourth class, and in maths, in art, in English, they swore they had no creativity. They were like, I have no creative, I cannot come up with any new ideas. And they thought, because I asked them, the thing was, hands up here who feels that they're not creative. And his hand was, I have no creativity in me whatsoever. And I said, okay, point to someone who does have creativity. And he pointed to the girl, and I said, where does she do that? And he literally named it off. He was like, art, she's really creative. In maths, she was able to, like, because they were doing these kind of little puzzles, they were able to. Anyway, literally, we flipped it around and we said, okay, what does creativity mean? It means the ability to, in a situation, to come up with different ways of doing things that didn't maybe exist before, or whatever, however we created that. And then we said, okay, what do you love doing? Obviously, he loved doing hurling. And straight away we dived into that. Okay, so when you get the ball in the hand, where does your creativity come out and express itself? And like literally, not to labor the point, but within 6-7 minutes, the kid was like, oh, I'm massively creative. I see it. I express my creativity in my highest value.
Deadly.
Yes.
Okay, that's really cool. Two things popped up there as you shared that. One, that's a great example. P, first of all, I remember in school, it was some of the most quote unquote academic students in my year that once we'd go into P, once we go into that hall, like all of a sudden you'd look and go, geez, they like some of them don't get the whole sport thing. And you'd suddenly see how the growth fixed mindset, if it was labeled in that scenario, how it plays out, right?
Absolutely. And look, that's step one. And that ideal, as we spoke about before, is to enable children not to label themselves. And so we don't label children, oh, they're lazy, or they're really, intelligent, or it's to understand that literally everybody has every trait and they will display it according to their highest value.
Okay. And then the second point was to do with when you mentioned that hurling example. So if a child was seeing another child and go, oh, they have this thing here, they have this growth mindset when it comes to this thing. If you dug into what does it mean when you say creativity, that they've really growth mindset when it comes to creativity, that you can suddenly sit down with them and find out where they have it because it's somewhere else.
Absolutely, because just remember the label, as we discussed in previous videos, the label is just a group of actions and inactions. And so once you break what it is they think they don't have, all of the actions and inactions, so the ability to create a new idea, and you have that action, then you go, okay, cool. So where do you create new things in the moment? There was another girl who created these new things with regard to skincare. She thought she wasn't creative, but she was big into her skin, and she had all these new skin regimes and different things that she used to teach the girls in the class. And she was like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And suddenly she started to see that she had this creativity, but in her own highest value. And then that dissolves the labels that the kids have of themselves, meaning, oh, I don't have it, it's all bad. They have it, it's all good. And that fires up the amygdala again, and you have your anxieties, etc., etc. But I think the next big thing that we were leading on to in the last video was the big trigger, Dave. One of the second greatest creator of the fixed mindset is we're going to say the imbalanced perception, but we might frame it as, even to make it even more digestible, let's just say a broken perception. So that might mean that something happens, and anytime our brain labels something bad or good, so all good or all bad, we label that as a broken perception. And the reason why we label that as a broken perception, and we need to nail it, is not because it's actually a neurological reason. So if we allow the brain to create that all good, all bad, we have no option, but it fires up the amygdala, because the amygdala is scanning. So when it sees an all bad, it perceives predator, and it wants to avoid the predator and seek the getaway. So what we're looking to do is We need to train ourselves in the moment, the whole time, to catch all these all good, all bads. Because these all good, all bads fire up systems one and fire up the amygdala. What do you think, Dave?
I think that anyone listening, like that would be under the umbrella of fixed, quote unquote, fixed mindset, right?
Yeah. Why
Yeah,
would it be under why would it be under fixed mindset? Let's work
because
it out here. So if something is
yeah,
all if for example, they fail a maths test, they get up in front of the class and they can't remember their spellings, they lose a friend. If it's an all good, all bad, meaning I wasn't able to do my spellings in front of the class, that's all bad. If you hear all of the negative things that means, automatically the brain perceives that as, let's call it, a predator chasing them. And they're going to want to avoid any situation that's the same or similar to that happening again. So they're going to want to avoid it. And is avoidance a growth mindset? No, that's fixed, because you're not looking to kind of lean into the challenge, so to speak. So anytime there is an amygdala response, meaning a seeker avoidance, a kind of an impulsive seeking of an immediate pleasure, or an avoidance of a pain, meaning a failure, that's fixed. Is that fair? Would that be fair to say? Is
yes,
there any
yeah.
better definition is there any more granular definition that we can put on that?
I don't think so. I think like with how modern everything is, we'll say with technology and how fast some things are changing. If you just bring it all the way back in the day when we'd be chasing things or running away from things, like when you just bring it back to that base level, it can't get any more granular.
You can't be present. You can't lean into you can't be tactical. You can't be present. You can't be calm if your brain perceives a dinosaur is chasing it. So if you get someone to come up, as I said, like say the child has to do their tables in front of the class, she cannot access that clear thinking part of her brain if her brain perceives a dinosaur is chasing her. And the dinosaur is chasing her because her brain is in that all good, all bad. It's all good if I get this right. It's all bad if I don't. So that kind of leads us into, Dave, like, okay, that's all well and good. And if we accept that, that's cool. But okay, what do we do about that? And I suppose that's kind of where you can introduce, let's call it what we would call it, like the basic, what do we call it? The basic repair methodology. So if we're assuming that there's a perception or a viewpoint or a belief that's all good, all bad, we need to repair that. Because if we don't repair it, it's going to trigger a fight or flight response. Is that fair? Are we aligned on that?
Yes, yeah, like to just bring it up to where we're at. So growth fixed mindset, the fixed mindset, it's a label that's used, and then we dig into it, that's when people tend to be in their amygdala. And then when we look at that, we're looking at the way that when they're in that, they can,
Avoiding, when they're in that amygdala, they're avoiding a situation. They're avoiding it.
yeah.
They want to run away from it. And that's it. That's the fixed mindset. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to school. I don't want to go to that social circumstance. It's any avoidance is an amygdala response. And just
And I,
recognizing it, I'm not making it bad. I'm just recognizing, because it does serve a purpose. We need the amygdala response for survival. We needed to get out of the way of a car that's going to knock us down. We needed to not go down let's say, a dark alley. We need that amygdala to respond to go, okay, that does not feel good, safe to me. So I'm not saying it's bad, but we need to understand that sometimes living in that survival brain is not optimum if we want our children to thrive and if we want to thrive.
yeah, and like I think sometimes as well, there's a lot of focus put on the circumstance and put on the label, and then it's all about the problem, the problem, the problem, the thing, the thing, the thing. But if you zoom out and we bring it back to perception, and that's what we spoke about, the lens through which somebody's looking at these circumstances through,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's framed as a broken lens, um, then onto the repair, and that's what we're getting
Absolutely.
into now.
Absolutely. So again, let's just take this very simply, and this should be applied the whole time during the day. So we would say, let's just say the all bad event happened. So I got dropped from my rugby team. I got dropped from whatever. Okay. If we all know, anyone who is kind of like coached or as children will know that's how that can be traumatic for the child, right? So the first thing we do is we practice this the whole time. We go, okay, all right. If the opposite had happened, so we go to the fantasy and we go, if you had got picked,
Real quick, just to
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in super
Yeah.
quick because
Yeah.
the word fantasy, if we just
Good day.
define that as just quite simply, if we just say the connection between like that being picked for the team is always a good thing. Like that's the all good. So if we just categorize fantasy, is that right?
The fantasy is something that we perceive as all good and has no challenges. It's like Elysium. It's like another word for it is the philia and the phobia. So the thing that we perceive as all good and there's no challenge to it. My life, I would be in heaven if this happened, and I would be in hell if the opposite happened. Okay,
got it. So a child doesn't get picked for the team, and in that moment, if you sat down with them and said, "What would have been?" Is it the drawbacks you're going to, or
after? So in the aftermath, what we do is we go, and this is how we train it. We go, okay, right. So if the opposite had happened and you got picked, okay, what would be the drawbacks? So if you got picked and your fan said the thing that you wanted to happen happened, okay, what would be the drawbacks, the disadvantages, the losses, the negatives to your life right now and to your highest value, the thing that you most value in your life? If we stay with this and make them answer 13, 14, 15, 16 times, what they're going to do is you're going to bring this heaven back to balance. And you're going to go, oh. And they're going to see all the drawbacks of the fantasy happen. And people who are listening might go, well, how can that be possible? There's no drawback. There's plenty of drawbacks. And some of the, so for example, like simple things like, and these are not like, you don't get picked for a team, so suddenly you become hypersensitive in terms of what your weaknesses are, what learnings there are for you. These are all the generic ones, right, that people try. But there's also the support side as well. So who's come into your life to kind of like to build you up, to, where's the soft side come into you? Who's come into you to kind of put their arm around your shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. So what we do, and Dave, just for, maybe I shouldn't bring in that other example right now, but when we can calm the fantasy down, and when we bring all of the other sides into the child perception, go, oh, I didn't really see that. I didn't really see the downsides of if I got picked. What we then do, we've calmed the mind down a little bit. And then what we do is we go, okay, into the fear or into the current situation of being dropped, and go, okay, now what are all of the upsides, the benefits, the advantages to your highest value of you being dropped? And we sit them down, we make them, they go 15, 16, 17, 18. And what happens is they start to see meaning in the challenge. And once they see that there's a type of I don't want to use the word neutrality. It is what we're talking about, but neutrality sometimes seems foreign to people. But when we kind of start to make the challenge meaningful again to the child, when their brain starts to see, oh, there are benefits, gains, advantages to me in the thing that I love most, then we can accept it. We will reject it if we see all challenge. We can embrace it and accept it and adapt to it, because remember, adaptation and growth mindset are the same thing. So to adapt it, we need to see how it's meaningful to us. So there's just a simple example, and we could use that the whole time. And it's best to use it, introduce it, not in a highly explosive scenario, but the whole time. So let's just say the child comes home and goes, oh, this happened to me today. I got 100 out of 100 in my thing. Okay. So what are the downsides to you? And what are the downsides to you and to the thing you love most of the fact that you got that 100%? And do you think you might kind of maybe study less the next time? Do like, we could socially, do people kind of look at you and envy a little bit? Might that challenge you in social circumstances a little bit more? We go to the 7 areas of their life, and we just literally, and what we're trying to do is trying to bring it back into kind of, let's call it neutrality, bring them back into the middle ground so they can be rational about it. Does that make sense, Dave?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it might be news for people if they hear it. You know, like if somebody gets, again, it's those common worldview paradigms that like 100 out of 100 is generally labeled as being like, this is the best thing ever. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's good.
Dave, sorry to interrupt you there, Dave. If we go and yes, but straight away, if you question that, the pride before what comes after the pride, the fall. When you investigate this, because everyone tells you like this self-esteem thing back in the 1990s, are like we should take pride in that, doing this and that, and we're not saying don't kind of recognize the upsides of it, what it's shown. Okay, it shows I can do this, and we're not saying go to the other side, but what we're trying to say is all of the great philosophies talk about balance, and they do that for a reason. Our bodies work on balance. Nature works on balance. Everything works on balance. Why do we use this strange thing where like our minds should not work on balance? Our minds should be, oh, that happened, it's all good. But that creates the all bad. So if the child thinks that, oh, it's all good, I got 100 out of 100, and that's where their identity lies, then you've created a fear. Because if it doesn't happen, that's all bad. And then that creates the fixed mindset. And that's where people start talking about, praising the process. And we mentioned that in our last video a little bit. But there's probably a good bit in that, Dave. I know we've just kind of touched on it, but I suppose the big kind of takeaway is that you should hunt for, let's call it broken perceptions. And we call a broken perception is any all good, all bad. Listen to your child. What are they saying? That, oh, if this happened to be all good, and straight away the alarm bells should be going. Oh, let's crack that a little bit. That's not a full perception. They're missing something here. And if I leave that go too extreme, that's going to create the equal and opposite fear. The equal and opposite fear is going to create the amygdala response, which creates your anxieties, your fear, your avoidance. So I think hunting for that kind of all good, all bads the whole time is a really, really, really practical, useful way to keep us grounded in the prefrontal layers of the brain, which are our rational, our present, our stable physiology. Our growth mindset, effectively, Dave. Our growth mindset. That's what it is. That's what it's trying to describe.
Yeah. So the growth mindset isn't a thing. It isn't attached
it's a state.
It's a state. Yeah, which is that looking at your perceptions and continually to balance them, to live in a more balanced state. Yeah.
And it's trained, Dave, as well. And just to say, we train our bodies, like we understand that we need to keep our bodies in balance. Why is it such a strange concept that if I said to you, eat everything you like all day, Dave? Well, we know exactly what the feedback our body will give to us. Like we train, balance is in everything we do to try and keep a healthy body. The same is exact for the mind. And what we are offering is again, like a process to keep our mind in balance. It's just constantly, it's a training method to keep that mind in balance, to keep it operating from the tribal prefrontal areas of the mind, of the brain.
Yeah, and it's not like working out the body. It's the same as doing workouts. You couldn't just put in 3 epic weeks and go, I'm done now for the year. This is it. Like it's the same. It's a continuous study for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, great stuff. Okay, so we'll wrap there for today. Anybody tuning in, thanks so much for listening, and you'll find us in our free school community. And part 1 of this discussion is linked underneath this episode as well. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.